Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Board for the City of Birmingham, Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. Could we please call the roll?
Scott Klein.
Present.
Robin Doyle.
Here.
Stuart Jeffries.
Here.
Bert Kozak. Daniel Scher.
Here.
Janelle Wolfe-Boyce. Brian Williams.
Present.
And Tina Min.
Here.
Excellent. So that is 6 members. We are still court, and all members, for the record, are voting members tonight. Move forward for review and approval of the minutes for the meeting on December 11th, which seems like ages ago. Any comments? Concerns?
I'll move the minutes of the regular meeting of December the 11th, 2024.
Support.
Motion to approve the minutes by Mr. Boyle, support by, we'll give it to Mr. Williams. Any conversation at a board level? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is unanimous. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Board. Tonight, we have a number of issues on the docket. I will try and explain each one as best I need to as we get into it. There will be an opportunity for public input on each item. If you are a member of the public, I will call for public input at the appropriate time. If you're here, you can come forward. If you're at home, you can use Zoom. I'll get into a little bit more detail as we get into each. With that, Mr. Dupuy, do we have any changes to the agenda as published?
There are no changes.
Fantastic. So let's dive right in. 225 East Maple, Social Kitchen and Bar. We have a request for a special land use permit and a site plan and design review permit. For those watching, those are 2 separate permits. However, since they are so intertwined, we usually discuss them together to try and make things a little bit more efficient for everybody and move forward from there. Mr. Dupuy.
Great, thanks again. So this is a special land use permit, technically amendment, as this is a bistro establishment. They serve alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption. They've been doing so since early 2010s. You may remember recently that they did a big reno in 2017, 2018-ish, that kind of freshened everything up, including the rooftop. Throughout all of that, though, they've generally maintained the same number of seats, both indoor and outdoor. Sort of on that point, I should make it clear now that all we are talking about tonight is outdoor dining. Everything else in the establishment, indoor seating and the rooftop, the facade, the rear, all of that unchanged as a part of this proposal. You notice a lot of that in the report, no changes in bold. So speaking of those outdoor dining seats, there was 56 approved, and this was reapproved in 2018. I did bring with me the existing plan, which I'll reference a couple times. It's also the second PDF in your Adobe window here, if you'd like to look at it on yours. But just for clarity's sake, this was the existing plan. You can see in the dotted lines here is the extent of their current enclosure, their vinyl and isinglass enclosure. They had approved some auxiliary seating beyond underneath that exterior stair before. So that's what it was approved as, and again, 56, they're going to maintain that 56, albeit in a different collection, if you will. So this new proposal, again, focusing on outdoor dining, because that's the only thing that's changing, will replace entirely the existing enclosure, which is kind of an awning, a slanted awning, vinyl fabric, isinglass, roll down, zip up. To their own admission, a little dingy. During the pre-application discussion, they showed a bunch of pictures, and I think most of us have been there and seen what it's been like. That enclosure's been there for a very long time. So they're looking to update it. They want to propose this aluminum, I call it pergola. It's got the still the 56 seats, a few in, few out. It'll have the roll down. I call them walls or enclosures. I guess it reads as a different material. I'm not an expert in this. They'll tell you a little bit if there is a difference between what we often refer to as isinglass and what they're proposing. But other than that, there's going to be a nice transom up here that's going to be real glass, and then the roof is a polycarbonate. And that's about it. They'll have this, I call it a half wall, where that roll down enclosure will kind of fall into, but that's about it. I note here that generally speaking, this the enclosure is pre-existing legal nonconforming, so they're not proposing to change it, which technically would require them to come into conformance with current zoning. Current zoning prohibits enclosures as we define them, which this fits the bill exactly. There's also the question of outdoor dining seats, which, as you know, bistros are required or they're permitted to have a maximum 65 inside and 65 outside. They've got about 20 more than they're permitted by ordinance, but there are no changes. I make the point that that's a pre-existing legal nonconformity that I suppose they could maintain, but it is a special land use, and the city commission can impose any conditions as they see fit, for the most part. So we make that note in here that this does not meet the enclosure definition, doesn't meet the zoning ordinance. They're going to either need to resubmit without enclosures, or they're going to need a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals to proceed as designed. Now, as you know, you're a recommending body, so the city commission will have the ultimate say. I will at least say that from what I understand, the applicant would like to proceed to the Board of Zoning Appeals. They can take whatever recommendation they get here tonight to that Board of Zoning Appeals, so keep that in mind as we discuss. A little context for the BZA would be helpful. And lastly, the approval criteria, we do a brief analysis of those 6 standards for site plan, 6 for special land use permit, and based on those standards, based on the existing conditions, the lack of footprint change, the number of seatings we have in here to recommend approval with several conditions, the first of which is really the only consequential one regarding the enclosure system. If they want it, they're going to have to get a variance. The other 2 is comply with the requests of all city departments. And the third one I've added recently just as a helpful tool for applicants in the minutes, just to remind everybody that site plans expire after a year. So that's a little bit of a new thing, but again, two motion languages in here. The whole applicant team is here. I did ask them to dress casual, but for some reason they're to the nines tonight, but that's no problem. And they're willing to answer questions should you have it.
Great, thank you, Mr. Dupuy. And I do like the addition to the report and then the new language in general that you've tried to incorporate. Board, any questions before we go to the applicant? Mr. Boyd?
Just one quick question regarding the rendering that we can see. Is there to be improvements to the quote via or alley that we're seeing the young lady standing on? Is that going to be improved?
So no, that's not, to my understanding, that's not in the plans. So you may see back here, like, technically this fern-looking bush isn't there now. There's 3 oak trees back there. I don't know that they're necessarily planning to re-landscape the via. I think it was just for
Artistic
visualization
license.
purposes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Or resurface. It's in pretty good condition, all things considered, the aggregate there and the trees, which is
Okay.
why DPS in their comments is suggesting tree protections, just in case.
Okay.
But everything seems to be in pretty good shape.
All right, any other questions? Is the applicant here? Would they care to come forward and provide any other context or color to the conversation? If you could, anybody who does speak, just please introduce yourself for the record so we...
Okay, wonderful. I'll keep it brief, as I know
Thank you.
everyone's time is valuable. My name is Jacob Newman. I'm here representing Skyview Detroit. This is my associate, Trenton Guthrie. He's the head of our commercial department. Also with us is Josh Humphreys. He's the chief operating officer at Social Bar and Kitchen. I'll speak to the qualifications of the company briefly, and then I'll talk about the project itself. Skyview Detroit, family-owned, Michigan-based. We've been in business for the better part of a decade in the Metro Detroit area. We have worked on highline visible projects like the Birdie Room at the Shinola Hotel. We've worked with the Frankenmuth Brewery, the Salt Springs Brewery, newer locations like Chicane's, Exchange. We actually just finished working with Dan Gilbert on his new sports bar Gillies downtown. If you research us independently as a company, we have a perfect 5-star rating, Google, Facebook, Yelp, every platform out there. We've also worked with about a dozen country clubs, the DGC, Birmingham Country Club, Lakeland's Plum Hollow, all included in that number. All the work we do is very high-end, very polished. This project specifically, it's a structure framed with a custom polycarbonate rooftop. To give you an idea of the quality of the material, structure nationally, partner with locations like Ruth Chris, Ritz-Carlton, Hyatt, Hilton, Four Seasons. It is a really high-end application, be a huge aesthetic approval. We're going to put a custom polycarbonate roof application on the top. It's a 25-millimeter triple wall polycarbonate. It comes with a special thermal insulation, and then the sidewalls that Nick referenced, that's a marine-grade Strataglass application. The screens will recess up and down. They're no longer zippered. It's actually going to be a magnetized application. So the screens themselves will recess up and down depending on the weather. Anything you gentlemen would like to add? Any concerns from the board?
Any questions from the board?
Is there any slope to that, or do you just accommodate for a snow load? Or
So it's accommodated for a snow load. The structure framing itself will support 50 pounds per square foot. There's also an internal gutter system around there.
where does the gutter system drain to?
So generally, the gutter system will drain through one of the columns. So one of the 4 columns you see on the ends there on the street side, when, I'm sure we've looked at it at this point, but there's a drain on one of the sides. We'll typically point the water runoff right towards the drain.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about any of the via getting icy because,
Correct.
Any other questions for the applicant? Anything else from you, gentlemen?
Unless there's any specific questions.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Stick
Thank you
around.
very
We may have something. To the public now, would there anybody from the public care to comment on the proposed changes to Social Kitchen on East Maple? If you are here, you can come forward to the microphone. If you are at home on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function. I do have a list of participants, and I can call on you as appropriate. So again, last call from anyone from the public, if you care to comment on this proposal. See no hands going up, no bodies going up. All right, we will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Board, conversation? Mr. Chair?
So I think we saw this earlier at a kind of a pre-conference. And while I'm not wild about the fact that there are that many seats, it, as Nick says, it's apparently a pre-existing non-conforming condition, and it's going to be a major aesthetic improvement. The current condition is not satisfactory. So, I'm prepared to support it. Whether or not they can get a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals is a different problem.
Other comments? Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I agree totally with Dan. I think it's a significant upgrade to the outdoor dining. And I would point out, I think, that the existing condition is also not in conformity with the current zoning ordinance. So we've got a situation where you've got a non-conforming usage of materials that wouldn't be approved at the present time. So because it's an upgrade, because it is not an expansion, it simply retains basically the existing usage within the area. I'm enthusiastically in favor of this improvement to the VIA because I think I would describe the existing condition or visibility from the VIA as underwhelming.
Any other comments? I'll just close by saying that had this not had a roof and did not have enclosures that come down, I would be fierce in my defense of trying to get the ZBA to see how this was a great idea. It's very sharp, very slick. I see exactly, when you mentioned the other places that you work with, I see it. So it's a distinct improvement, but it does not meet the ordinance. And it doesn't mean it in a way that we went through a long, arduous process at City Commission direction. That being said, for the ZBA, if they do hear this, it's pretty much an existing condition. And so if they found a hardship that caused them to provide a variance, I don't know that from a planning perspective it's changing a whole lot about this area in a manner that I care to spend much time on. It is just not compliant, and it's ideally not what we want in that sense. However, aesthetically and design-wise, it's fantastic. So with that, I would entertain a direction if the board would like to go on. Mr. Williams?
So I'll make a motion if I can.
Yeah, we've got two here if we're going to do anything.
Yes. I think the first is special land use permit. So I'll move to adopt the findings of the planning department in its report dated January 22, 2025, related to the approval criteria outlined in Article 7, Section 7.36 of the zoning ordinance, and recommend approval to the City Commission the special land use permit application for 225 East Maple Social Kitchen and Bar, subject to the following three conditions. One, the applicant must resubmit plans that do not contain enclosures as defined in Article 9, Section 902 of the zoning ordinance, or obtain a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Two, the applicant must comply with the requests of all city departments. And three, the applicant understands that the site plan approval shall be valid for a period of, I'm not sure we need it on this, do we? We're not approving the site plan in this motion. So I think there are only two conditions, as I see it.
It's pretty fair. I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So with those two conditions, we have a motion by Mr. Williams.
Support.
Support by Mr. Scher. Conversation at a board level? To the public on the motion, is there anyone in the public that cared to comment on the motion itself, which is to recommend approval with the two conditions? Any conversation from the public? Any comments? Hearing none, bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Mr. Williams, do you want to follow that up?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion with respect to the final site plan and design review. So I'll move to adopt the findings of the planning department in the report dated January 22, 2025, related to the approval criteria outlined in Article 7, Section 7.27 of the zoning ordinance, and recommend approval to the City Commission the final site plan and design review application for 225 East Maple Social Kitchen and Bar, subject to the following three conditions. One, the applicant must resubmit plans that do not contain enclosures as defined in Article 9, Section 902 of the zoning ordinance, or obtain a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. Two, the applicant must comply with the requests of all city departments. And three, the applicant understands that the site plan approval shall be valid for a period of 1 year from the date it is granted. Upon request, the appropriate reviewing body may grant an extension of not in excess of 1 year to the applicant prior to the expiration date in accordance with Article 7, Section 7.28 of the zoning ordinance.
Motion, Mr. Williams.
Support.
Support by Mr. Scher. Conversation at a board level? One last time to the public on the motion to recommend approval of the final site plan and design review. Bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion granted. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all.
All right, let's move forward.
For the record, this is casual for these guys.
Thanks. We'll talk soon, gents.
We'll see if they dress that way on Zoom. Let's move forward. 34350 Woodward Avenue, Lavery Porsche, a request for a 1-year extension of the approved final site plan for their new 3-story auto sales agency.
Great, thanks. And as described in the short cover memo, they've submitted a request for a year. You can grant up to a year per the zoning ordinance. And basically, their current site plan expires literally today. So it's not a problem. It's as long as you get it in before the expiration date. So there's really no issues with that. I do have a representative from the development team here. Should you have any specific questions about where they are, I think that his letter outlines it pretty well. And we've been meeting fairly consistently over the last 6 or so months trying to iron out the details. But the request is for a year. There's some sample motion language here should you decide to grant that extension. And I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Any questions, really, Mr. Scher?
Does the applicant have financing? Is that an issue?
I wouldn't want to answer that. I wouldn't be confident answering that.
So I'd
But
like to- when the
again,
applicants-
Maybe the applicant is here, we could just quickly have them come forward and answer that or any other questions. Please introduce yourself if you would, please. Thank you.
My name is Tim McCafferty. I'm with Redigo. I'm representing the Fred Lavery Company and the Fred Lavery Porsche Project. And
So
so
the-
your
the-
question,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, why don't you repeat it for the
Yeah,
record?
the question is adequate financing available so that you can actually start demolition by March 1 and construction by, I think it was May 1 that this said?
so we're working toward all of that right now. So along with the plans that we have about 60% complete right now, we're working on all the financing so that we can get started roughly April 1.
Financing's coming from a third-party lender?
It's going to come from different sources. It's going to come from the owner himself, and it's going to come from a third-party lender.
Okay. And I guess my other question is, if you're that far along, why do you need a year?
Just asking for the year. You never know what happens as we go through the design process. We have Porsche Cars of North America that reviews everything, and then, of course, the city of Birmingham has to review everything. And there's quite a few details that go into this project that we want to make sure that we have right and everybody's satisfied with. And we don't want to have anything that would push it into, a bad portion of the year for starting construction or anything else like that that would interrupt us from the flow that we want. So just in case, that's all it is. We fully intend on starting by April.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
No problem.
Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on the request for the extension of the site plan? 1-year extension. Anyone from the public, anyone at home using Zoom, use the raise your hand function? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Any conversation, board? Seems pretty cut and dry. Mr.
I'm fine with an extension. My concern is, we've done this with a couple others. Under these circumstances, I don't know that a year is necessary. I'd suggest 6 months, be on a shorter string. If they have a problem, they can come back and get an extension and explain why.
So I hear you. My only concern is that I'm hearing building permits taking in the city of Birmingham 3-4 months themselves. And I'm not laying blame on anybody for that, but just the reality of staffing and reviews. I would hate to get into a situation at 6 months where we're waiting on the staff to review things. I hear your point. Is 9 months too?
Yeah, 9 months would be better.
I'm trying not to overload this where we have to come back
Yeah, if
for something silly.
if the construction drawings aren't done until March 1st, then from what you're saying, they're not going to have a permit by April 1.
Right.
Yeah, so then in that case, I'd be more comfortable with 9 months.
Okay. That's fine. Why don't you make the motion?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
No, he's
I don't know if there's anybody else had a comment.
any other comments?
I'm fine with a year. It's not like we're looking at a blighted site. We're looking at a Porsche dealership that's going to get replaced with a Porsche dealership. So,
I would tend to agree with you. I'll go either way. It's not.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Please go for it,
I'll
Mr.
move
Chair.
that the planning board grant an extension of 9 months for the approval of site plans for 34350 Woodward Lavery Porsche.
Motion, Mr. Scheer. Do we have support?
Support.
Support, Mr. Williams. Any conversation at the board level? To the public, any final comments from the public on the motion to extend the site plan? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous.
Okay.
Let's move forward. 320 Martin Street, request for reapproval of an expired firehouse site plan. We got them all tonight.
Yeah, how about that? You're noticing a trend here between the new language I've been adding and two of our 3 agenda items. So this did unfortunately expire, just straight up. I think it's been expired for some time actually now. I think we just got lost. We've met about 100 times. We've talked about a myriad of different things and just lost track of time. So it's very similar from what I understand to the Lavery Porsche project in that they are trucking on CDs. They intend to build it. They're going to submit for permit soon. There's just this little stick in the mud in regards to site plan. The ordinance clearly states that the building official can't issue a permit without a valid site plan. So here we are. And the bulk of the new report is just reviewing a bit of the history. It's still a 5-story mixed-use addition. It's still all in the same spot, all the bulk area placement stuff, all the same. I noted the conditions of approval from last time, which I'm suggesting have been remedied. So, of course, there's the one exception when it comes to the parking levels, which,
Mr. Dupuy, if you could,
Yes.
maybe just for the record, I don't mean to belabor this at all, but could there be perhaps a 1-minute
yeah,
synopsis of what the project actually is, just so the record properly reflects
yep.
that we're discussing it and refreshes the public if they have perhaps forgotten?
Yeah.
What we're looking at.
Yeah, just quickly run through the floor plan, site plan renderings quickly, just to tell us
Sweet.
what is.
Sweet, not a
Very
problem at all. So again, this is a 5-story addition project, although it reads as a new building. It is in fact an addition. It's being added on to the historic Birmingham Post Office building. It did make it through the Historic District Commission, no issue, oh, not no issues, but eventually. They did approve it, so that hurdle is hurdled, if you will. Again, 5 stories. It will have a bit of a retail space on the Maple side. The remainder of the first floor is, we'll talk about the garage area in a bit, along with lobby and mechanical, stairwell, back of house type stuff. The other floors are office and residential. We're going to have the 2 floors of office on 2 and 3. Sorry, I scrolled a little too quick, but here we are on floor number 2. Here we are on floor number 3, 2 floors of office as permitted in D4. You move on to 4 and 5, you'll see 6 residential units proposed. Again, large residential units, that's a permitted use. You're permitted a 5th story, so long as it's residential. And it also has a little bit of a rooftop use, and of course mechanicals. It meets the requirements of the D4 overlay, 5 stories, 80 feet max height, including mechanicals. Some of the highlights of the site, if I can go back for just a bit, we talked a lot about this neat thread park, this kind of quasi-community space that we kind of feel as though we missed out on a couple other projects that were similar. It's set back about 10 feet from the neighboring church building, so they decided to create this community thread park as a kind of an access way from Maple to Martin, a little seating space, a little landscaping. It's a unique part of this proposal. We reviewed the landscaping plan, of course, all permitted species, no problem. In terms of the elevations, the predominant material is brick. The brick was designed with the intent of complementing the original historic building to the south, not to match, but to complement, as well as the limestone features. So the 3 main are the limestone and the brick and glass. All the glazing requirements are met, 70% on the first floor, max 30% on the second floors. Again, there's a rooftop use that meets all the standards, 5-foot setbacks from eave lines. And here are some renderings, the thread park, some views from the adjacent properties. And before I forget again, I should review the parking. So,
Yes, please.
Originally, we knew it as sort of we kind of comically called it the parking vending machine. It was 2 levels, technically, of underground parking that was completely automated. So you'd pull your car into an elevator. There ended up being 2 at some point, which you'd pull 2 cars in, and it would automatically file your car away in one of the underground spaces. There was upwards of 50 originally. I think it was 52, if I'm not mistaken. Do I have it here?
That's what your report says.
Yep, which well exceeded the required parking on site, which is only required for the residential units. So at this point, it's transitioned. They will still have a level of underground parking. They will also have a few parking spaces on the main level for a total of 18, which still exceeds the required parking for the residential units. In fact, I think 18 is about what they have today on site. So now that was a change that was administratively approved after a pretty in-depth review with the team here. And I did ask the development team to add a little color to the change based on the inordinate amount of time they spent looking into that system and why it doesn't work now for them. But that's the gist. In summary, they've still got parking on site and they're still overparked. So we didn't have an issue with it, yes.
And the parking structure is a block away?
Quite close, yes. Which was a big conversation point at the first round. I think we actually wondered why they were proposing so much because of the proximity of the parking structure.
Correct.
So for all those reasons, and specifically, mostly because they're still overparked, the change was fine for us. So that's the gist. We did still, though, run through the approval criteria of Article 7, 7.27, which we all felt was fine, which led to our recommendation for approval, or as I call it, reapproval of this site plan with just the two requirements, the comply with city departments and just making sure they understand that it'll expire after a year, which I think they well know now, but just in case.
Questions? Mr. Jeffries, did you have a question?
Yeah, so on the parking, because that's where we spent, as I remember, a lot of our time. Is this now still some kind of automated thing that takes you down, or is it a ramp?
It's a valet system. So if you see here, there'll be a valet person that is employed by the Cernow company that will work here full-time, as I understand. You will drop your car off, they will take it down, and then park it in this lower level.
In an elevator, though?
In an elevator, yes. It's not a ramp.
Okay. That guy doesn't show up, what happens?
Sam said he's going to park the cars himself. Kidding, of course, but I might
That's what the
let him
architect
answer.
is for. He's going to get
Yep.
Bidison.
And then just, what are the dimensions on that retail? Because, I mean, that's like our main retail corridor of the whole town. Just,
Yeah, forgive me if I can defer that question to Kevin, Mr. Bidison, the architect as well. I don't see them here, and I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. Scheer?
So, Nick, is the valet something that you think should be included as a condition of the approval for the site plan? It's a little unclear to me whether that's simply a convenience or whether that's a matter of safety or operating the elevator is an issue or finding parking. I'm just not quite clear I understand how it's going to really work and whether a valet needs to or should be a condition of the site plan approval.
Sure, and if I can kind of boil it down to brass tacks a little bit. So let's say you work in that building. If the valet's not there, could you operate the elevator just as they could? And then will that be in their plans? And if not, should that valet person be in the condition just so
Well,
we
these
make
spaces
sure?
are technically for the residential, so I'm assuming these are going to be residents of the building
Yeah.
that are going to have a need every day to get their car in and out. To Mr. Scheer's point, this is not an office setting where you might have someone show up or
Sure,
not.
sure. Save
Perhaps
maybe
we'll
a
ask
few
the applicant.
executives, but.
It's a good
yeah.
question.
Yeah, and if I can, save my answer until maybe they explain it a little bit
Good question.
to us.
All right, with that, maybe the applicant could come forward and kind of help answer a couple of these minor questions.
Robin had something.
Mr. Boyle, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, I did.
I apologize.
Memory is fading. But I remember we had a discussion a while back that when we were looking at these mixed-use developments, which included upper floor residential, that we actually asked for detailed floor plans of the layout of the residences. Am I right? Because I note here that floors 4 and 5 don't show any detail. It just says residential, and it says the floor space, I think, against each of there are 6 units, am I right?
6.
But no layout of the way they're configured. And I remember one of our previous members of this board asking that we ask for that in site plan approval.
And I'll
Brian?
say, we do technically need that information to determine room counts for parking.
Right?
I think we did have it the last time around.
Yeah, we
And-
have that. We just.
And I do acknowledge that we don't this time around. We could add it, that they re-add that detail to the
Please.
site plan as an
If these are
approval
going to be
condition.
the signed,
Yeah.
no longer signed, but if these are the signed plans, then yeah, we should have that.
I think that'd be fine, and I think they're extremely large units, so.
Yeah, they are.
And we understood that the room counts weren't changing, so the parking was easy.
Okay.
so I may have overlooked it for that reason.
Thank you. Great.
Welcome.
Gentlemen, ladies, thank you for coming out on this warm night. Couple of questions, I guess.
Could you just,
Oh, I'm
Kevin, we
sorry,
know you,
Kevin
but-
Biddison, Biddison Architecture.
Thank you.
I'm here with Sam Cerno from the Cerno Company. Here to answer any questions that I can. What was your question again?
So the question is maybe explaining whether or not the valet is an expected, or is it a safety operational issue? How, are residents able to go up and down on the elevator and maneuver the cars around themselves?
This is a fully functional, the residents, will be able to utilize this if they wanted to. The valet is more of a convenience thing, and as well, so that office tenants, if they want to come in, have the valet take their car, to the ramp or something, they have the ability to do that as well. So it's
You mean, when you say the ramp, you mean the
parking structure.
City parking structure.
So
okay.
it's kind of a twofold thing. It's to give, if the residents don't want to park their car, they can throw their keys to the valet and have them do it. If they want to leave at 2 in.the morning, they can get their car, it's a fully operational system for them, but we expect that we're going to have that, running as a valet service, but I guess technically it would be a convenience thing if that's how you want it.
So in answer to one of the questions, if the valet was not there, he was sick or running an errand or something like that, no problem for a resident to operate the elevator themselves?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very user-friendly. It's completely enclosed, finished inside and outside, elevator lift device for automobiles.
Thanks.
Okay. And to Mr. Boyle's point, you have all of the floor plans of the residential, at least fleshed out enough for site plan that you can,
Yeah,
you can
we
provide
can provide that for
administrative
Sure.
approval.
How deep is that retail? I'm looking at this
Oh, I'm sorry.
parking spot that's
Yes.
10.6, and this does not look double that.
So it's like 20 by 60. It's a little over 1,400. It might be 1,400, so it might be a little longer than 60. I think the base spacings are about 22 feet.
Which is not far off, by the way, from what it was last time. It was always kind of a skinny, long unit.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Just a very quick one. You're currently displaying a Restoration Hardware furniture? Has that,
In the back of
Yeah.
the building?
does that have any bearing on the progress of this development, in that you're probably waiting for RH to finish off?
No, I don't think so. We're currently ready to submit drawings for permits. The plan is to do that next week. We just did a final review, and a few little tweaks that have to be picked up. But, that's our intent, is to get stuff into the building department in the next week, probably.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Biddison. To the public, anyone from the public here to comment on this proposal? Again, if you're here, come forward to the microphone. If you are at home, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. And I don't see any hands going up. Don't see anybody standing up. Bring it back to the board for discussion. Mr. Scher. Did you were raising your hand, or did your hand
No,
get raised?
my hand was just shaking.
Everybody took one step backwards, is what I'm
I'm
hearing.
ready, exactly. I'm ready to make a motion, but I don't want to cut off conversation.
No. Is there any discussion at the board? I mean, I think this is, again, a wonderful development. It's something that we've seen before. I know there may be things that we didn't like the other two, we're disappointed in, but it is the reality of the ordinance and the reality of what is allowed.
I'm in favor of this. This is a beautiful project. But the one thing that strikes me is I'm thinking about if you did these, you can't do it, not every lot is conducive, but if you did these all the way down Maple Road, you'd kill the town, because you'd have these itty-bitty 20-foot, retail slots. You wouldn't really be able to support it. But for this site, this is cool. It's, we're actually adding a retail
Right.
kind of place. So, just had to say it.
Any other comments? Mr. Williams?
Yeah, I should point out for the record that on July 27, 2022, this project, which is essentially before us again tonight, was approved unanimously by the planning board, with most of the people present tonight present then, except Mr. Scher. That's why I think you should make the motion.
Mr. Scher, did you have an idea?
I have an idea.
Please go for it.
Okay. I move that the planning board adopts the finding of the planning department in the report dated January 22, 2025, related to the approval criteria outlined in Article 7, Section 727 of the zoning ordinance, and approve the final site plan and design review application for 320 Martin Street, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant must comply with the request of all city departments. Number 2, the applicant understands the site plan approval shall be valid for a period of 1 year from the date it is granted upon request. The appropriate reviewing body may grant an extension not in excess of 1 year to the applicant prior to the expiration date in accordance with Article 7, Section 7.28 of the zoning ordinance.
Support.
Motion, Mr. Scher, support, Mr. Williams. Any conversation at the board level? To the public one last time, any conversation on the motion itself? Motion to recommend or to approve, pardon me. I see no hands going up on Zoom. Bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, moving forward, our next item, 185 Oakland. This is a request for final site plan and design review for a new whole building generator at the rear of the property.
All right.
Welcome.
So, as you can see in the report, we had an application for a full building generator at 185 Oakland. Currently, we have, you can see throughout the report, that we have specs that have been submitted, as well as a general landscaping plan. There are no changes to the principal structure itself. It's important to note that. So lots of, again, no changes throughout this report. The most important things to note is the addition of this generator. So there are some major things to discuss here, specifically regarding the site plan as well as the landscaping plan. We had a hand-drawn site plan submitted. It is important to know that the building department is looking for some more information on the site plan specifically. They want a little bit more regarding the generator placement. And it's important to note here that there is no landscaping directly on top of the site plan. The landscaping was submitted separately as a few renderings. I also wanted to note that these are the pre-existing pictures of the current site as it stands at 185 Oakland. And the images here for clarification are, the line through them means that the applicant is intending to keep those trees. That is not something necessarily reflected in the images in the packet. The renderings in the packet show that while there are some remaining trees, as you can see here along this side of the property on the right of the image, the trees have been removed along Ferndale there. The applicant wanted to note that that is not the plan, or that is not the case, that they are planning at the moment to keep those trees and lift the generator unit up and over those existing trees as they provide sound barriers. So it's important to note as well that the proposed screening of the unit, I'm going to scroll down to an aerial view, is done all through landscape. The image in this rendering for the units itself is not necessarily a direct reflection as to what the unit will look like, which is another comment that we made. There will be a base underneath the unit, a fuel tank, if you will, as well as stairs on either side of the unit. So it's not quite exact as this image would show. But in terms of overall aesthetic and improvement to the site, there is an addition of greenery and landscaping that we as the planning department do approve of, and we think that landscaping could in fact be an adequate sound barrier and adequate screening for the unit itself, but wanted to toss that back to the planning board for conversation. So at this time, we submitted a motion to postpone the actual approval of this site until we get more site plans and a detailed landscape plan.
Mr. Williams?
So the proposed location is at what I would describe as the northeast portion of the site,
Correct.
which is along Ferndale.
Correct.
Technically north. Yeah. Just,
I'm going to ask you to come up in a second, so I appreciate you're trying to help, but just, we got to keep the conversation.
it's on the north, but it's on the east side of the property, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I see.
I see a yes and a no.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out, I'm looking at Google Maps, I'm trying to figure out where this is going to be. Is it going to be here? It's on the north side. It's east of the parking to the rear, right?
It's in a green area where I
So
think
it's a
they've had
green area
benches now.
it's at least the eastern half of the north side, right?
Yes, it's currently in the green belt to the
It's
north.
vacant. The property is
Correct.
vacant to the north of the existing building. Okay, I understand where now. There are a lot of trees there. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Right
That's
here.
where it's going. Okay.
Correct.
Proposed. Thank you.
Mr. Sheriff?
So I have a couple of questions. First, if you go on to page 86 in the packet, there's a picture of a Sunbelt generator. I'm assuming that's temporary and it's got nothing to do with
Correct.
this application?
That has been on the site as we understand it, pre-existing.
All right. Secondly, there are two residences nearby, one to the north and one to the east across Ferndale. So that raises two questions for me. One is, have they been provided notice of this application?
Yes.
Okay. And do we know, because I didn't find it, it might be here, what's the operating decibel rating of this generator? Do we know?
The contractor will be able to provide, the applicant will
All
be able to provide that information for you.
And if I can add, just for some context, it's still good to know, so I'm not dismissing the question. In the noise ordinance, during emergency situations, generators are exempt anyways. So, not that it wouldn't matter, it's just that there's no threshold that they can exceed that would be in violation of a code during an emergency. Testing, though, there are noise ordinances, it'd be 80 decibels. So just for reference, when you hear the answer, during testing, they can't exceed 80 at a property line. So
Okay, and
it just
the
depends,
testing
it's
is
all
also,
situational.
testing's limited to what, 5 minutes a month or 15 minutes a month or
Something like that, yeah, 15 minutes,
Yeah,
I
okay.
think it is.
Mr. Boyle?
Very quick one. You made reference to a fuel tank?
Correct.
So the new generator would be powered by gasoline?
By diesel, to my understanding.
Okay, maybe we'll get clarification, because I thought it would be.
Yeah,
Natural gas.
it's a two-layered unit. So there's the base where the tank is, to my understanding, and then the unit itself atop that.
Okay, and one last point, having spent many a night looking at these here, in which direction does the exhaust? Where is the exhaust on the proposed unit? And which
I don't
direction?
know if I have the specifications in the document, but I'm sure the applicant could provide
We've been
additional.
told, and maybe
To
just I've been told, that it goes up.
Up, yeah,
The exhaust is on the top of those units. I'd ask them to confirm,
yes.
but as we've been talking for several months, and I understand it goes up, which is why the fire department had so few comments.
So, okay, we should hear the.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should confirm, and they maybe describe the mechanics a little better, but
Sure.
Okay. I guess my only question would be, clearly there are no, lack of a better phrase, setback issues related to these sort of generators being in, I guess this is technically a rear yard, based on the address, but it is also immediately facing a street. Is there any implication that we need to be aware of that? Typically, when we've talked about these, they've been in rear yards and not in side yards in this.
It doesn't appear to be a violation in our ordinance. The biggest concern here is adequate screening of the unit. I think that was planning's number one concern.
Okay. The applicant is here, their team is here. If they would care to maybe come forward, introduce themselves, and maybe try and help us a little bit with understanding the project and some of these details.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us come in here to the board today. My name is Dan Bertolini from Aero Heating and Cooling. I'm here to represent Belfour Disaster Restoration, and they're worldwide, so this generator supports them. In the event that the power's out at their building, they can still conduct business around the world. So, yeah, they had just...
The real iron.
In answer to a few of your questions that came up, the decibels are 72.3 decibels at 23 feet at 100% operation. So the full load operation, the loudest it would be is 72.3. It is a top discharge. There's sound attenuation that sits on top of the generator to reduce that sound and muffle it and direct it straight up. The other answer, I think it was, it will be pointing towards the side street, but the discharge will be going up straight.
And we don't have the specific unit, I think, is what I heard.
No, we have, the sheet that we have has the unit with multiple size tanks on it, and we highlighted the line with the tank that's going under it. They requested a 48-hour diesel run time on the tank. The tank is a 2-layer tank, so that there's a tank within a tank. If the inner tank should ever rupture at any point, there's an alarm sensor that goes off and you're notified immediately, and it contains the quantity of fuel that's in the tank, so there's not a spill concern with the diesel.
And this is an above-ground storage tank, correct?
Yes, the storage tank sits on the cement platform and the generator sits on top of that.
So does the platform that it sits on have a lip of some kind so that in the highly unlikely event both hulls are breached, the diesel's contained within that area, or is it just flat?
To my understanding, it'll be a flat cement platform, and the state requires the tank in a tank, which eliminates the bowl around in concrete, yes.
And Dan, just so you know, I talked with the fire marshal today, and they are going to require them to submit some sort of plan in that extreme event, because there's catch basins nearby. There's, of course, the ground for it to seep into. So they are interested in what happens.
Okay, so as long as they're on it, I'm
And there's
comfortable.
state permitting involved with storage tanks like this, correct?
I don't know, but
There's state permitting with storage tanks.
good.
As a 25-year civil engineer who's designed storage tanks.
Okay.
There are permits that might be required from the state.
Okay.
So I'm
Great.
assuming that
Good to
the engineering department and the fire marshal, building department are all on board with those?
Is that a question?
Generally, I mean, yeah, with the few requests they had, yeah.
I know when I have a hard time understanding the bulk of this, how the height, the massing of it from the spec sheet. I read the spec sheet. I've done it for years. I know I can read it. Sure. But just seeing it in real with the tanks underneath, and are there screening on the tanks? How high is the generator going to be above the tanks? Just kind of understanding, is this a 6 foot tall? Is it 8 foot tall? When the tanks are in place, I think is really important.
Yep.
To not only understanding the screening, but just the visual effect from the neighbors.
Yep.
You know, and
So the height of the generator sitting on top of the tank with the annunciator on top of it, which is a smaller portion of the top, is 10 feet, 10 feet, 0.5. So it's just under 10 and a half feet.
Okay.
That's to the sound attenuation top. The length of the generator is 23, just a hair over 23 feet long. The width is 8.5 feet. And the height with the tank underneath it, that's what the two walkways are in the one picture, so that you can get up and adequately stand and service the generator from the two sides.
a platform, if you will.
Platforms,
Yeah.
yep, with stairways.
Mr. Jeffries, you had a question?
Is the first floor of this building parking in the back there? I see a garage door.
So when you see, I don't know if in the one picture it shows it, but the first floor it takes up about 3/4 of the building, and then you drive underneath the second floor on one portion of the building.
Go up.
Yeah,
go
keep
up,
going.
Keep going.
There's the picture right there. So where you see the gentleman in the yellow jacket, that's the drive-through portion that you can go out onto the front street.
All right,
So there is parking underneath that structure.
Okay, so we're not blocking offices with a 10-foot tall thing, we're blocking the windows on the parking part.
No.
No, we're actually, the windows are outside. There's like a cafeteria, I think, right there along where the
If you
generator.
bring up, could you move up the images to the one that's got all the nice plantings? Keep going, keep going, keep going. There you go. And again. Let me see where.
Let's do it from above.
Above.
There you go.
Yeah, right there.
There you go.
You're on green windows on the lower level. Where are they?
Yes.
To my-
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, what
Behind the
are in
windows
that space?
on that level.
There are windows there, and the generator would be 10 feet away from the windows and the gas meter.
I believe they are, from what I've observed, there is a cafeteria, at least half that width, looking out, like a break room.
Okay.
And then there are offices, so desks and people working.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a garage door where Summer's hand is right now.
No,
It's
there's
just
no-
an opening. I think someone mentioned a garage door.
Yeah, there's no garage.
It does read that way. It's open.
Oh, it's just open.
So that cuts through back to Oakland there, and there's parking underneath.
Okay.
Did you say 10 feet from the windows to
They-
that generator?
Yes, we're actually going to be 10 feet from the gas meter. And then it actually puts you about 12, 13 feet off the building.
Really?
There's one picture. Yes, it's huge. It's not a problem. Okay.
Did you consider any other locations in your
We
kind
did.
of
That's a
review
great-
of this project?
That's a great question. First thing came up was the roof. This generator weighs
Structural
26,000
items.
pounds.
It's the first thing I
Puts it
thought.
right out. Plus, filling with the oil would be impossible for the gentleman to get his hose up there to refill. So it came out to grass or parking lot. When we got there, actually, Nick suggested, hey, let's put it in the parking lot, it'll be less trouble. And we all talked about it, and we met with the building department and the fire chief, and everyone looked at the situation, and the way that's a bowl back there created by the buildings, we would actually create a pocket of no circulation there for the exhaust. And everyone agreed, the fire marshal, building department said that moving it to the green belt gets it further out where there can be a greater dissipation of the exhaust fumes. And it just seemed like a better location versus the parking lot. The other concern for me, for the neighbor, was that when you put it back in that bowl on the parking lot, it's going to be like a drum. There's nothing to absorb the sound, so it's going to start echoing back and forth and actually be louder than in the screened area where the trees can muffle the sound a little bit.
That's a good answer. Any other questions for the applicant?
What are we doing here?
Anything else you want to bring up for consideration? We still have some deliberation to do here, but
Yep. We were trying to take everybody's point of view into consideration in the location of this. We are sympathetic to the neighbor and their concerns, and that's why we chose this spot with the trees. So that's really the only input that I wanted to put into that. The parking lot, they'll end up losing spaces, but I think it's going to be more of a complication for the homeowner that's sitting next to it than the green belt area, because we can screen it better.
and the use of this is only during emergencies when you've got to keep operations up, and your
Believe me.
operation is to help those with emergencies, is that
Yes,
correct?
they really only want to run this minimally because the tank that's on there only gets them 48 hours, so it's going to have to be refilled.
What is the general exercise schedule for this? Is it weekly, biweekly?
We like to do weekly. It could be pushed to bi-weekly if it really comes down.
You're talking 5-10 minutes a time or something,
A
or
15-minute run cycle to ramp it up and cool it back down again.
something this size, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Jeffries?
Sir.
I'm just thinking, I have a little bit of history in automotive, and I know that the exhaust from natural gas is a little, is a little more friendly than from diesel. Has this got any emissions kind of thing on there so that it doesn't smell like it's a...
Yeah, it's not going to be like a diesel truck firing up that you see that giant plume coming out of it. I can't answer directly that answer, that it's, what the emissions are on it,
Yeah.
but I know it's approved for these locations.
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about, it's in the summer, we lose power, you fire that up, guy next door throws his windows up because his AC's out,
Yeah.
and then he's...
Yeah, I don't think it'll be that type of scenario with the diesel.
All right, thank you very, very much. To the public, is there anyone from the public who would care to comment on this proposal? I don't see much of a public here, but if there's anyone at home watching on Zoom, I do see someone with a hand up. It is, we can make sure that they get him unmuted and available. It is Matt's iPhone. I assume this is Matt.
Hello. Yes.
Hello. If you could please introduce yourself, name and address, and then let us know your comment, please.
Yes, I'm Matthew Brown. I am, in fact, the next door neighbor to this project. So as you might imagine, I have some interest in what's going on here.
Yes, sir. What can we do for you?
So would you like me to just start in?
Yeah, please, give us your brief comments, and we'd love to hear them, please.
Sure, absolutely. So, I understand, as most of the residents do on this street, that we're in a downtown area, that we're adjacent, particularly in my case, because I'm directly adjacent to office and commercial buildings, and I'm okay with that. That's why I don't complain when they sweep their lot at 4 a.m. in the morning and wake everybody up, or they leave random lights on all day long. But a massive commercial generator in what is effectively the front yard of everyone on the street is a bridge too far for us. I want to be a good neighbor, but I can't be okay with that. And I don't believe that their rationale for moving it to what, again, is effectively the front yard aesthetically of every resident on Ferndale Avenue was done in consideration of the people next door or around the area. I think they don't want to have to lose the parking in the back, and I understand that. I'm a business person as well. But this simply is such an offensive aesthetic alteration to what we see that it's just simply not tenable for us as residents. And in addition, I heard the gentleman mention that the fumes or whatever the emissions would be better in the front where they could breathe or whatever. But I also heard before that a lot of talk about how they go straight up and they're not an issue anyway. So that being the case, I really think it could go in the back. Where they're proposing to put it is, if I sit, for instance, or if many other residents in this area in their front living room or whatever, it is right there. And what they're referring to, you have to be careful when you hear the rear lot or whatever of Balfour, is they may be calling it their rear area, but it really is very much the front yard of every residential home on Ferndale Avenue. So they have frontage on 3 streets, on Old Woodward, on Oakland, and on Ferndale Avenue. And what really is the rear for them would be the parking lot on the west side. And I get it. They probably don't want to lose 3 or 4 parking spots or whatever they would have to lose. But that would be the place, or some other place. I guess they can't put it on the roof, but some other place would be the area to put it where it would not negatively, and I mean hugely negatively, aesthetically, in terms of emissions, in terms of noise, and every other way, affect the residents of Ferndale Avenue, and no one more than me, because we're that neighbor next door. So we're in the position of having to, if that's approved, or it makes it past the next hurdle, to fight it every imaginable way we can. I'd be okay with it in the back, where their parking lot is. I know it's going to be noisy, it's not going to be pretty, but to move it out where they have it it's literally adjacent with our front yard. That's where it goes. And you can put some arborvitaes around it or something, but that's not going to affect the emissions. It's not going to affect the noise. It might hide it a little. Half the arborvitaes are going to die in the first year. And I just think that they should be required to put it have to make a decision. Do you want to sacrifice the parking, or do you want the generator? I understand their desire for a generator. I have a generator. But it cannot come at the expense of the residents on Ferndale Avenue.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your input. Are there any other comments from the public? Is there anyone else on Zoom that wishes to raise a hand and provide any input? I don't see any other hands going up. I'll wait a second. Nope. So we will bring it back to the board. Discussion. Board, any input?
Nice, Nick. What was the fire department input on location?
Besides the request for, I'm going to call it spill mitigation in the event of a hazard, they appreciate it going up, and that's about it. I don't know that there's like...
The fire department didn't have any comment on specifically where at the north end this would go?
Not necessarily. I think that Dan was correct in that they would have concerns at the rear with it collecting because of the nature of that space and how high the buildings are around it. But I think either way you shake it, the emissions are going to go up, and they were, I don't want to say that, I don't want to speak for them necessarily and say they were comfortable as ever, but they were okay with it because of the way it's oriented.
Okay.
Any other?
So I guess the other thing that goes with that is, did the building department or the fire department make any comment about whether noise is better or worse in any of the potential locations back there?
So besides their kind of template comments, I would say no. They just made sure to note that there are noise ordinances and that they must follow them, but they didn't elaborate.
So seeing no other hands really kind of popping on the board here, when I walked in tonight and I had read this and visited the site and sat down, I thought that this was going to be a 10-minute mercy killing, with all due respect, that there was no way you were going to walk out of here with anything other than some harsh words. I appreciate the input you have provided, and I think that you've gone a long way to helping me understand not only the need but the operation of this generator, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that is going into why you're trying to do what you're doing. I'm still not sold for a couple of reasons. Number one, we have site plan requirements, and I know I'm a stickler, but at the same token, we don't have a site plan yet. It was a fine hand sketch, but we need a site plan that conforms with at least the spirit of the ordinance, that shows us where this is on the site, dimensioned, et cetera, so that we can properly vet that. Secondly, we need the landscape plan to coordinate with that so that we're looking at the same thing and we're understanding exactly what's going on, seeing the unit on the site, its size, its bulk, its massing, et cetera. The trees that you're going to call out, specifically what trees, and I think Mr. Dupuy and Summer here did put that down. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm very concerned about the location that close to Ferndale Avenue. I would far prefer it. I was the one that asked the question for that reason. I would far prefer it further in toward the site. I would agree with further to what I'll call the west, I guess technically, toward the alley, if you will, and the power lines. I don't think you should go that far. I do think you're going to have tall buildings, you're going to get some cavitation of the sound and the like. But I do think trying to push this toward the edge of that or even into the first few parking spaces is something you really need to take a look at. You're not getting my approval tonight. I think it's a postpone just because we don't have the documents. But you've gone a long way in helping me understand what you're trying to do, and I'm supportive of your efforts. But I think you've got some work to do to try and clean up the requirements, but also show us that you're doing what you can for the best of the neighbors. I know that's what you're trying to do, and I think a little bit more work will get you there if you're willing to do it. You're a great business here in this community. You do a lot of wonderful work, and I know you understand it's all about people and what their lives are all about. So just take that to heart as you're trying to look at this and maybe tweak this, in my opinion, to better suit the situation and the surroundings. And I think at that point, you even heard the resident say so. I think you're going to have a lot more support from those in the area for what you're trying to do. Mr. Boyle?
I just add to your comment earlier, I think when we get an appropriate site plan, it needs to clearly indicate the adjacent land uses and where the buildings are, so that we can see on the plan the distance between the generator. And we're all sitting here on our phones. We're all looking at Google Earth, and we can see just what there is there, but we need to see it in a plan. It's not there.
Okay.
Any other comments? Sure, I'll come forward. I'll allow it. Sure. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Doug Frazier, employee at Belfour.
Yes.
Would it matter if the screening was taller, if the evergreen trees were 15 feet tall?
I don't want to sit here and try and design it. I would say my personal opinion is no. I always worry about screening with vegetation around units like this because inherently something's going to I don't want to say a leak, but you know what I'm talking about, the discharge of these units. You're going to get these plants not necessarily growing to their full potential. And so I worry about that. I always have. And again, I think the placement this close to the street is what's my major concern. If it was pulled back beyond the setback of that home, I would feel much more comfortable with its placement in reference to just the rest of Ferndale Street.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, board, I would like to suggest that we follow the recommendations of staff, which is to postpone. Maybe add a comment about making sure that we have a more adequate site plan. And Mr. Dupuy, I'll leave it to you, as far as, I don't know that I need elevations every 50 feet kind of thing. I mean, you can use your judgment on that, but just something that is more in line with what we're used to seeing.
Yes, yep.
And I would entertain a motion if anybody was interested, unless there's further conversation.
We don't need to do it, just postpone, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
So I'll move to postpone the final, do we have how quickly can we get this done? I guess the question, could we have to postpone to a date certain? Nick?
It would be, so no, you don't have to, in order to save noticing costs and things like that. A date certain would be good.
What's the date of the second meeting in February?
24.
February 24th?
Let me ask the applicant, do you think that kind of turnaround for things would be adequate? I don't want to put you in a situation to fail.
So February
24th.
You'd have to get things in a couple weeks earlier, so we'll give you about 2-3 weeks to pull some more details together.
Can I ask a clarification?
Why don't you come forward, just so we're all on the...
So, thank you for everything, but I'd like to ask a little clarification, because I understand the site plan for seeing the exact location, proportional sizing and everything. It sounds like you're concerned with evergreens for the screening. Is that correct? You kind of brought it up like you didn't know if that would be adequate. So what I'm trying to do is achieve something that we can submit that would be to your liking, so we don't do this wrong.
Understood. Let me just say that I think you would need to follow the ordinance on screening, and staff can help direct you there. I'm not going to sit here, if you come back with a site plan that moves this to a location that we all feel is appropriate, I'm not going to sit there and tell you your landscape in lieu of a wall is unacceptable. It's not where I'm going with this. I do think that if you properly landscape it, it could work. I was just simply reacting to, I don't like to overly rely on that being the savior of all things, and I feel the placement was more important, so.
Okay.
The date is actually February 26th,
Oh, gosh, thank you.
not the 24th.
Thank you. 26.
Unless
yes.
we're having a special meeting I didn't know
No,
about.
please, no.
Okay. All right, so
Thank you.
26th of February. So I'll move to postpone final site plan and design review for 185 Oakland Avenue, Belfour property restoration to February 26, 2025.
Support.
Motion, Mr. Williams, support, Mr. Boyle. Conversation at the board? Anyone in the public have any comment on the motion to postpone? On the motion to postpone, any conversation from the public? I don't see any hands going up, so we'll bring it back to the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
See you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. All right, let's move forward. I think we got another housekeeping item. We were supposed to, oddly enough, ironically enough, we were supposed to have a public hearing last meeting on residential generators, which we did not have because the meeting was canceled. So, board, I think, Mr. Dupuy, you just want to officially reset a public hearing so that you can notice and...
That's right. It was a mistake. I just failed to notice the public hearing. I'll blame the holidays, not my just lackadaisical nature or anything like that. So,
When do you want it?
just to be formal, it actually is February 12th. I checked.
All right.
And that gives you adequate time to notice.
It does.
Okay.
We're all set with that. And before we make the motion, just to be clear, you did ask for a few minor tweaks last time.
Yes.
That have been made with no problem. So
Great.
they're in here. The language reflects those minor tweaks. So we are ready again to set that public hearing.
So I'll move the planning board sets a public hearing date of February 12th, 2025, to review amendments to Article 4, accessory structure standards, Section 4.03, to add provisions for standby generators.
Motion, Mr. Williams. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Scher, any conversation at the board level? Mr. Jeffries?
Nick, when you say 5 feet from the structure, do you measure from the drip line or from the wall of the house?
I think
A-plus question.
I think it includes any overhangs. I think the language would say 5 foot, including any overhangs. So it'd be, in your example, the drip line.
Okay.
Well done.
We got a house that's got 2.5-foot overhangs and 5 feet. I'm getting close then,
Yeah, 'cause they were very particular about
Capturing
that, they being the fire
All
department.
right, good point.
All right. So we have any other comments on the motion? To the public on the motion? Did I do this? The public on the motion?
No.
Anyone from the public care to comment on the motion to set a public hearing? There's no public, so we'll bring it back. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion unanimous.
Thank you all, thank you all.
What do you got? You said, when I saw pre-app here, Mr. Dupuy, after this workload, I almost reached through the phone.
You almost done did it, yep.
I
yep,
almost
yep.
done did it. But you want to give a quick update to the board on what that is, or?
Yeah, this is just straight up a courtesy, because I thought you'd like some closure here, that you reviewed this at a pre-app already.
Yeah.
But the city commission had such a bigger role in this that we kind of did a sort of pre-app there too. And forgive my simple language, but they all but nuked it. They were not interested in the slightest, so we will not be seeing this coming back. I don't expect that the applicant's going to give up so easy, although I haven't heard from them since. They may be just trying to pivot a little bit, but in the short term, we'll be seeing it. So there's your closure.
Great. Any comments on project updates or administrative approvals, anything from the board? Again, I appreciate you putting these in, Mr. Dupuy.
Yeah.
Draft agenda for the 12th, we have the generator ordinance, Triangle District bonus height. I'm sure there are a thing or two else you have up your sleeve that we'll probably try and sneak in there. maybe?
All pre-apps, baby. All pre-apps. Yeah, I'm just going to invite everybody.
Sneak in.
Yeah, they might sneak in. You know, we've got other things going on, the child care ordinance that we're working on, kind of behind the
Impervious surface
scenes.
and other stuff that we've been,
Right.
Do that.
Right, so we may be ready for that, but it's
Good.
also budget season and liquor license season, so we're a little jammed. But
all right.
no
With
site
that,
plans or anything.
any other business before the board?
I have two things. One is an update, just because we haven't met since. We all know Jason Emrine got appointed to the city commission, so he is no longer a planning board member. It's going to be very weird. They've just noticed an intention to appoint to the planning board, so we will have a brand spanking new alternate member in the coming months.
When are the interviews, do you know?
I do not know yet. The app window just opened. I think they'd probably be due maybe like February 10th, on that first meeting in February. I'll let you know if you're interested, so you can watch. So he's doing a great job, I think, as we might have all expected so far, so.
Great.
Good for him. Second, this is something I don't need tonight, but for next meeting, I'm going to start pressing you to finalize our action list for 2025 so that I can get it in the annual report that we're required to send to the city commission. So next time, or maybe as you just have some spare time, take a glance. It's been in the packet for months now, just preparing, and it shouldn't be a surprise, the things that are on there. But if you want to add, subtract, I need to know by next meeting. So I'm just prepping you for that. Other than that, we're good.
Fantastic. Any other business from the board?
Bang that gavel.
Hearing none. Meeting adjourned.